I'm Russell Hess, Secretary-Treasurer of the Southeast Minnesota Area Labor Council. We are, I think, 16 counties, and I won't harass you with naming them all, but Mankato to Winona, Faribault to Red Wing, to St. Peter, including Rochester. I live in Plainview, Minnesota, city of 3,200, so I bring a different perspective to this debate, I think. We know putting people to work in the construction industry spurs more economic development, often private and not have needed to be funded by public resources. We don't build stadiums or malls of America in Southeast Minnesota, although we would take a Viking stadium. But we do have a Rochester Civic Center expansion and potential rail projects that we know will spur more growth. Use the Highway 52 project in Rochester as an example of the millions of dollars of growth that will come from that. How are you going to, in Southeast Minnesota, use state funding to strategically build on our assets to create more jobs?
Thank you. I appreciate the distinction between state investing in projects that are just for the metro area and for smaller communities as well. If you look at school buildings across the state, there are a lot of them that are in shameful condition, and corporate CEOs who always say the schools have too much money, they wouldn't want to be in those schools. We have to look at the needs of all the public buildings, the roads, bridges, and invest in that. At a time like this when the construction industry is out of work, that's the time to invest in it. And I think public money ought to go into it. It ought to go into things with public purpose, though. Public housing, rehabbing public buildings, making our schools updated, new technology, building roads and transit. We have to invest in all of those things with public money because that's where it comes from. That's what stimulates the economy. 2 years ago we found out what happens. I think a lot of people in this room knew what was going to happen sooner or later, but when we failed to invest in our public infrastructure, bridges collapse. Sharon Erickson-Ropes from down in southeastern Minnesota told me a month before the bridge collapsed that she was going out with her local highway engineer, wanted to look under the bridges and see how many of them in her counties were falling apart and at risk of collapsing. That was before the bridge collapsed. We have this need to be done, and if we invest up front, I always argue that an ounce of prevention really is worth a pound of cure. And for public infrastructure, we have to do that. We also have to recognize the human infrastructure. We can do that as well. Governor Pawlenty's solution to the budget in the time of a recession was to lay off people. We laid off teachers. We laid off public employees. That's the worst thing you do when there's a problem of too many people unemployed. If we invest in our schools and our public infrastructure, not just in the public physical infrastructure, but the human infrastructure, make sure the county employees who work in social work, the school teachers, that they have work too, because that's how we're going to build a stronger, better equipped, well-trained workforce for the Minnesota future.